So this story really makes me ask the question, how many times have we seen ghosts and not even realised it? Watch the story until the very end and you'll see exactly what I mean. But before we move on to the story, I just want to wish you all a very Merry Christmas. Fill yourselves with turkey, spend time with family and make some very special Christmas memories. Have a listen to this story, and if you like it, please smash the thumbs up button and subscribe to the channel for more spooky stories just like this one. Now, onto the story. I'm your host, Severed Soul. So, this one starts with one of those moments that didn't really seem all that strange at the time. It was only later, when the pieces no longer seemed to fit, that it curdled into something far worse. So, Susie had lived in the first house on her block, or the last, depending on which direction you approached from. Either way, her place backed onto an alleyway that ran down the side of her house. At the far end of that alley sat a single isolated home, technically on a different street, but positioned at the rear of the property, meaning the occupants used the alley as their main way in and out. Susie didn't interact all that much with the people who lived there. But the word around the neighbourhood was that the woman who owned the house dabbled in the illegal supply of certain medications. But we're not talking about street drugs here. She was selling her own prescription pain medication. You see, this woman had cancer. She was older, frail, and relied on a mobility scooter just to get around the inside of her home. Still, people from the neighbourhood came and went constantly. Some of them were younger. Some of them hung around all day. Now, Susie recognised a few of the faces, friends of friends, people she'd seen here and there at parties or bars she'd been to years earlier, familiar faces, but not people she knew very well. Close enough to notice, but far enough to ignore. And then, one day, Susie noticed the flashing blue lights of an ambulance approaching from the far end of the alley. Susie just happened to be looking out of a downstairs window when she saw it slowly crawl up the alley. The ambulance came to a stop right outside that old lady's house. Susie's first assumption had been simple and grim, but a fairly obvious assumption nonetheless. She presumed that the old lady had died. As I already said, the woman had been sick with cancer, so it all just kind of made sense. Now, upstairs, Susie's daughter, Zoe, had also been watching, but from a different angle. From a bedroom window that overlooked the alley more clearly. And from where Zoe was watching from, she could clearly see a stretcher being carried out of the house. The person on the stretcher was quite obviously deceased. The body was completely covered by a sheet, just the unmistakable shape of someone, very sadly, having lived their final moments. And walking beside the stretcher was a young girl called Hayley. Now, Hayley had been one of the younger people who hung around that house. Susie and Zoe both knew who Hayley was, but didn't really know her well enough to talk to. In fact, everyone around the area knew who Hayley was. She had a distinctive look. She was pretty, with light blonde hair, always parted straight down the middle, and always worn in 2 braids. It was kind of her signature look. There really was no mistaking her. So Susie watched as Hayley walked alongside the stretcher, sadness etched all over her face, one hand resting gently on the covered body. It looked like a blend of comfort and grief, like someone saying a final goodbye. A few moments later, Zoe came downstairs looking quite unsettled. She said to her mum, "I don't know who died, but I know it wasn't Hayley." Susie agreed with Zoe immediately. Yes, I saw her too. She looked so sad. It must have been the old lady that lived there. At the time, it felt resolved. Logically, it had to be her. Susie and Zoe tried to put it to the back of their mind, and they went on with their day. One afternoon a few days later, one of the other neighbours passed by Susie in the street and asked her a question that stopped her cold. "Did you hear about that young girl, Hayley?" Susie shook her head confused. "No, but I saw the ambulance come for the old lady." "I saw Hayley though. I watched her walking next to the stretcher when they brought the old lady's body out." There was a pause, an awkward silence, and then the reply that sent a chill down Susie's spine. And by now, I'm pretty sure you've all guessed where this story is going. No, that's not possible. It wasn't the old lady who passed away. It was Hayley. Apparently, she'd overdosed in that house, and the old lady is under investigation. Susie felt her stomach drop. She argued the case at first, insisted the neighbour must have her facts wrong. She described Hayley in detail, the braids, the hair colour, the way she'd walked beside the stretcher, the hand resting on the body. There's absolutely no way, Susie said. It was 100% her. But there was no confusion, no mistake. Hayley had been the one on the stretcher, covered, dead. And yet Susie and her daughter had both watched her walking in that alley as if she were very much alive. That had been when the realisation crept in. Susie and Zoe had just seen the full-bodied apparition of young Hayley, just maybe an hour or so after she'd passed. At the time, she hadn't questioned it at all. Hayley hadn't looked pale, or distorted, or translucent, not how you'd imagine a ghost to look at all. She'd been solid, plain as day like any other person you might pass in the street. Susie had never seen anything like it before, and she'd never seen anything like it since. It was as chilling as it was sad, to think that for a brief moment in the middle of an ordinary day, she had watched a girl comfort her own lifeless body as it was tragically carried away. And that's all we have time for today. I really hope you enjoyed that story. Once again, Merry Christmas, and if you liked the story, click the like button, subscribe to the channel, and leave any thoughts down in the comments. I'm your host, Severed Soul.